Welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Keely Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader.
I love your proposal, but without strategic direction. Those words can stop your heart for a moment. The subtle indication that your carefully crafted idea, the one you've poured weeks or even months into developing, might be sliding into irrelevance before your very eyes. It's the corporate equivalent of shifting sands beneath your feet, and it happens to even the most brilliant of ideas. Hey there, I'm Keely, and welcome back to Communicate to Lead. I recently worked with a coaching client, let's call her Melissa, who had spent weeks developing a mentorship initiative for her company. She had gathered the data, built a framework, and was ready to present it to the leadership team when suddenly the company announced a major reorganization. New leadership came in with different priorities, and overnight, her initiative seemed to lose all momentum. Should I just shelve this? She asked me during one of our coaching sessions. It feels like no one cares about mentorship anymore when everyone's worried about reorganization. That conversation with Melissa reflects what so many of us face right now. How do you advocate for yourself and your ideas when the organizational ground is shifting beneath your feet? A few weeks ago, in episode 97, we talked about the Advocacy Loop, how to build relationships that champion your growth. If you haven't listened to the episode, or maybe you need a refresher, click the link in the show notes to tune into that episode. Today, we're taking that concept a step further by exploring how to adapt your advocacy approach when organizational priorities are in flux. You will learn exactly how to position your ideas so they remain relevant and valuable, even as the landscape is shifting around you. By the end of our time together, you'll have concrete frameworks and approaches to not only survive organizational change, but to use it as an opportunity to demonstrate your strategic value and advance your most important ideas. So you might be wondering, what happened to Melissa? Well, that's a story we'll get to because it illustrates perfectly how the right advocacy approach can turn apparent setbacks into powerful opportunities. So let's dive in. Let's start by acknowledging something important. Organizational priorities don't shift on a whim. These changes typically happen for specific reasons. Market disruptions, leadership transitions, economic pressures, or even strategic pivots. Understanding why priorities are shifting is your first advocacy advantage. When you can speak knowledgeably about the factors driving change, you immediately position yourself as someone who gets the bigger picture. Let's face it, understanding the rationale behind changes doesn't make them any less challenging for your initiatives. Projects that were once centerpieces of the strategic plan, or they were mission critical, can suddenly appear peripheral. Resources you thought were secured might evaporate overnight. Even your strongest advocates might find themselves scrambling to adapt to their own changing circumstances. This is where many professionals make a critical mistake. They either stubbornly push forward with their original pitch, ignoring the changing landscape, or they completely abandon their ideas, assuming there's no place for them in the new reality. What I found in my work with leaders is that there's a powerful third option, which I call the Advocacy Adaptation Framework. This framework has three components: recognize, reposition, and rebuild. Let's start with the first one. First, recognize the nature and scope of the priority shift. This means objectively assessing what's truly changing, what's staying the same, and what's uncertain. Ask yourself, what new challenges does this shift create? What new opportunities might it open up? And what core organizational needs remain consistent or constant despite the change? For example, when Melissa looked closely at her company's reorganization, she recognized that while the language around talent development had changed, the underlying challenge remained. They needed to build internal capacity and reduce costly turnover. The shift hadn't eliminated the need. It had simply changed how the organization talked about it. That's the first step. Recognize the nature and scope of the priority shift. The second step is to reposition your idea to align with emerging priorities. This isn't about abandoning your core vision. It's about finding new pathways to advance it. Here are some questions to think about. How can my idea help address the challenges created by the shift? And which elements of my proposal become more valuable in this new context? That's the second step, reposition. And then the final step is to rebuild your advocacy approach. This means adjusting your communication, timing, and strategy to match the current organizational climate. During periods of significant change, decision makers are typically focused on immediate priorities and risk management. Your advocacy needs to meet them where they are. I worked with a financial services leader who had developed an innovative client communication platform just as her company announced a merger. Instead of pushing forward with her original implementation timeline, she broke her proposal into smaller phases with clear, immediate benefits for merger integration. She changed her language from innovative transformation to integration, support, and risk mitigation. The core idea remained the same, but her advocacy approach evolved to match the moment. This leader understood something crucial: the difference between abandoning your ideas and strategically repositioning them. One comes from a place of defeat. The other comes from a place of strategic strength. And in times of change, that distinction makes all the difference. So how exactly do you reposition your ideas when priorities are shifting for your environment or your company? This is where we build on the value-first communication approach I shared in the Advocacy Loop episode a few weeks ago. If you recall, value-first communication means framing your contributions in terms of the impact they create, not just the tasks they involve. During priority shifts, this approach becomes even more critical, but with a specific twist. What I have found works is what I think of as the value pivot approach. When I work with clients navigating organizational change, we focus on 3 elements. First, identify the new organizational pain points created by the shift. Every change creates new challenges: implementation hurdles, knowledge gaps, communication needs, or even operational inefficiencies. These pain points are openings for your ideas. Second, connect your initiative directly to addressing these emerging challenges or pain points. This often means emphasizing different aspects of your proposal than you originally planned. And third, highlight the adaptability and efficiency components of your idea. During uncertainty, organizations value solutions that can evolve and don't require massive resource commitments. Let me show you what it looks like in practice. Remember Melissa's mentorship initiative? Okay, when she applied the value pivot approach, she made the following adjustments. Originally, she had positioned her mentorship program as a development initiative to build our leadership pipeline. After the reorg announcement, she repositioned it as a stability framework to retain institutional knowledge during transition and reduce costly onboarding of new hires. Same program, different framing. She identified that knowledge transfer and retention were significant pain points during the reorg. Her mentorship framework could directly address these challenges while requiring minimal new resources. When communicating reposition ideas, your language needs to evolve as well. Let me share 3 conversation starters that I found particularly effective, and I'll make them concrete so you can hear exactly how they sound in real conversations. The first approach acknowledges the change and offers a solution. It sounds something like this. As we navigate this reorganization, one challenge I'm noticing is that we're losing institutional knowledge between departments. My mentorship initiative can help address this by connecting department team members with their counterparts in the new structure for targeted knowledge transfer. That's the first approach. The second approach shows how you've adapted to new priorities. Here's how that sounds. I've adapted my customer feedback project to specifically support our new priority of reducing operational costs. The most immediate benefit would be identifying the service elements customers value most, allowing us to streamline less valuable offerings without impacting satisfaction. And the third approach appreciates the new direction while showing your contribution. And it sounds something like this. What I appreciate about our new market-focused approach is the emphasis on customer retention. I've identified how my work on the onboarding redesign directly contributes to this through personalized follow-up sequences, which our data shows increase second purchases by 22%. Notice how each of these examples acknowledge the change, connects to new priorities, and offers specific value, all without abandoning your core idea. The key is to use concrete language that ties your work directly to current organizational needs. That's how you are going to get the buy-in of the people that you need to. Different stakeholders will also need different communication approaches during shifts. When speaking with executives, focus on risk management and immediate wins. With middle managers, emphasize implementation simplicity and resource efficiency. When you are talking with peers, highlight collaboration opportunities that make everyone successful during the transition. These subtle communication shifts can dramatically change how your ideas are received during periods of change. They demonstrate that you're not just advocating for your own project, you're genuinely focused on organizational success, even as definitions of success evolve. And that brings us back to Melissa. When she repositioned her mentorship initiative as a knowledge retention strategy during reorganization, the new chief operating officer didn't only approve it, he expanded it, seeing it as a critical tool for maintaining continuity during change. What could have been a shelf project instead became a flagship transition initiative. Being thoughtful about when and how you contribute to conversations is what I call strategic visibility. Choosing the right moments to speak up and ensuring your contributions create maximum impact. This approach becomes especially crucial during organizational shifts. When priorities are changing, the places where important decisions happen often change too. New task forces form, different stakeholders gain influence, and informal conversations sometimes matter more than formal meetings. The first step to effective advocacy during change is simply making sure you are in the right rooms, or that someone who supports your ideas is there to represent them. The second step builds directly on this presence, adapting the content of your contributions to match the current climate. During stable periods, innovative ideas often get attention. During change, solutions to immediate challenges stand out. This shift in what people value hearing means you need to create what I call solution moments rather than just raising questions or concerns. If you're wondering what a solution moment is, well, that occurs when you offer a clear, practical path forward for a pressing issue. These moments are advocacy gold during uncertainty because they position you as someone who helps navigate complexity, not someone who adds to it. Here's how to create these moments. First, use your presence in key conversations, that first step we talked about, to listen carefully to the challenges being raised about the change. Then, offer a specific, practical idea that addresses one aspect of the challenge. Keep it concise and frame it as a possibility, not a demand. You could say something like, one approach we might consider is blah, blah, blah. The third step in strategic visibility during change is finding the right balance between persistence and adaptability. Once you are in the right rooms and contributing valuable solutions, you need to maintain a consistent presence without appearing resistant to new directions. Now, here's something I've seen work time and time again during periods of change: getting other people on board with your ideas. Let's face it, your voice alone might not be enough when everything is in flux. But when multiple people start echoing similar thoughts, that's when decision makers really pay attention. I saw this work beautifully with a marketing director I coached last year. Her company was shifting from a product focus to a customer experience focused strategy. And suddenly her content calendar project seemed to lose all momentum. Instead of continuing to pitch it on her own, she started having coffee with leaders from sales, customer success, and the digital team. And during these conversations, she listened carefully to their transition pain points. For the sales team, it was losing their product-focused talking points. For customer success, it was training reps on the new approach. And for the digital team, it was updating all the online materials quickly. She then showed each of them how her content calendar, with some thoughtful adjustments, could actually solve these specific challenges by coordinating messages across all customer touchpoints during the transition. When the repositioned content calendar was presented again, it came with vocal support from, you guessed it, from the sales team, customer success, and the digital team, all emphasizing how it would solve their specific transition challenges. The project was approved within a few weeks, despite tightened budgets across the organization. So how can you apply this approach yourself? Here's what I recommend. First, identify a few key people who might benefit from your idea, but work in different areas of the organization. Second, have one-on-one conversations to understand their specific challenges during this time of change. Third, think creatively about how your idea can be adjusted to address those particular pain points that these people raised. Fourth, when you have refined your approach, be sure to invite their input to make it even better. And finally, number 5, when discussing your idea in meetings or with decision makers, acknowledge these colleagues' contributions and how the approach addresses multiple needs across the organization. This approach transforms what might have seemed like simply your pet project into a collaborative solution that serves the broader organization, exactly what's needed during times of change. Organizational changes can significantly impact your carefully built advocacy network. We all know that. You think you have your network, you're ready to go, and then things shift, people leave, roles change, some people gain or lose influence, or simply become focused on their own transition challenges. This reality requires an intentional approach to maintaining and evolving your advocacy relationships during this time of flux. Let's talk about how to do that effectively. First, assess how the changes affect your existing advocacy network. Here are some questions to think about. Which advocates remain in positions of influence? Who is now making decisions relevant to your ideas? And which relationships need renewed attention due to changing roles? That's number 1, assess the changes. Then identify new potential advocates who gain influence during shifts. Reorganizations often elevate different leaders or create new roles with significant decision-making power. These emerging influences should become priority relationship targets for you. For your existing relationships, develop what I call the mutual value reset approach. This is a framework for reconnecting with advocates when circumstances change. And it has 3 components. First, acknowledge the change and its impact on them personally. You could say something like, I've been thinking about you during this transition. It seems like your role is evolving significantly with the new departmental structure. Second, offer genuine support for their priorities. You could say something like, I'd love to hear what's on your plate right now, and if there's any way I can help as you navigate these changes. And third, share your adaptive thinking. Say something like, I've been rethinking my approach to my initiative in light of our new direction, and I'd value your perspective on how it might better serve our evolving needs. This approach of acknowledging the change, offering genuine support, and sharing your adaptive thinking recognizes that your advocates are themselves navigating change. By leading with support for their challenges, you strengthen the relationship even as you continue to advance your ideas. So to build relationships with the new influences during change, focus on demonstrating your adaptability and solution orientation before making specific requests. It's important to give before you ask. Contribute helpful insights in meetings they attend. Share relevant information that supports their transition priorities, and offer assistance on immediate challenges they face. These contributions establish you as a valuable resource during uncertainty, someone who helps rather than asks for help. This foundation makes them much more receptive when you eventually discuss your repositioned ideas. Self-advocacy during organizational shift is ultimately a leadership skill that demonstrates your ability to navigate complexity. When you can evolve your ideas and approach while maintaining your core vision, you showcase exactly the kind of adaptability that organizations value during this time of change. I once had a senior executive tell me that she identified future leaders by watching how they handled uncertainty. She said, "Anyone can execute when everything is clear and stable. I look for people who can adapt without abandoning their principles. They are the ones I want leading teams through our next challenge." By thoughtfully maintaining your advocacy network during flux, you position yourself as exactly the kind of leader, someone who can navigate change while continuing to create value in evolving circumstances. And who doesn't want to work with a leader like that, right? So try that out. Let me know what you think. And as we wrap up today's episode, I want to bring together everything that we talked about. At its core, advocating for your ideas during change is about adapting without abandoning, evolving your approach while staying true to what matters most. We've covered some practical approaches you can use right away, identifying new points created by the change, repositioning your ideas to address those challenges, being strategically visible in the right conversations, and getting other people on board with your vision. Crucial. These approaches aren't just about saving your current projects from the chopping block. They showcase something much more valuable: your ability to navigate complexity and find opportunity where others see only roadblocks. People start to see you as someone who can thrive during uncertainty, not only as someone who survives it. And that reputation as an adaptive, solution-focused leader, it becomes one of your most powerful career assets. Remember Melissa from the beginning of our conversation, the one whose mentorship program seemed completely doomed after the reorg announcement? 6 months after she successfully repositioned her program as a knowledge retention strategy, something interesting happened. She was asked to lead a cross-functional team implementing major elements of the reorg itself. When I asked her in a coaching session what led to this opportunity, here's what she told me. The COO said they needed someone who could see connections between seemingly different priorities and bring people together around practical solutions. He specifically mentioned how I've adapted the mentorship program to serve multiple needs during the transition. That, my friend, is the real power of skillful advocacy during changing times. It doesn't just advance your ideas, it showcases your leadership capacity. I would love to hear how you apply these concepts from today's episode in your own leadership journey. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your experiences or challenges with advocacy during change. And feel free to ask questions. I might just talk about your challenge or your example on another episode. Next week, we will be exploring another fascinating dimension of leadership communication, what I call the authenticity paradox, when being yourself feels too risky. We'll dive into the tensions many women leaders face between authentic expression and professional expectations. And I'll share concrete strategies for navigating this complex terrain. If you found today's episode helpful, would you take a moment to share it with another woman leader who might benefit? Because we navigate these challenges better when we do it together. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Until next week, my friend, I am Keely, reminding you that great communication is the foundation of inspiring leadership. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember to communicate to lead.